It's
So
nice. Very nice.
let's start. Sean Stone, welcome to my show. You are a fascinating human being. I read so much about you. Although you are only 35, you have done so much already. You have been an actor, producer, director, screenwriter. You also published a poetry fiction lately. So I have many questions to ask you. First, of course, it's about the pandemic. What's your life is like during pandemic?
Well, thanks for having me, Annie. Ironically, my life is not that different than what it was before,
Uh-huh.
because my lady, my partner Kaya, and I, we've had the luxury of being digital nomads. You can call it digital nomads, as a modern term,
Mhm.
where we sort of work more from digital, purposes from our laptops. So it's not that affected. I mean, obviously, it's not fun to be restricted in terms of travel.
Uh-huh.
We love to travel, and especially traveling abroad and going to places like Bali, where she's a teacher for breath work. She goes to Bali to train people.
Mhm.
So we miss those kind of trips. But overall, we're close to the land. We like to be away from cities. We like to be close to nature, and that hasn't changed really with the pandemic. So we've been very fortunate that it hasn't changed our lives that much.
So are you in California right now?
Yeah, we're home in Santa Barbara.
Oh, that's yeah, one of my favorite places in the world.
Yeah, no, I mean, the only thing missing is the town. The town is such a great town. It's not the same, with it's not that it's locked down, but it's just not the same when you have to wear a mask in stores, and the theaters or movie theaters are closed. That's not the same. But the beach and the mountains are still the same.
Yes, I love everything outdoor in California. You go out, you are in the park immediately.
Well, I know Texas. I love Texas. I have family there, and I'm very proud of Texas for initiating this challenge to the other states in the election. I must say, Texas making me proud. But I got family in San Antonio, and Austin's a great town. My girlfriend, I said Kaya, she's from Houston actually originally,
Oh,
so
really?
we got roots in Texas.
Oh, you have family in Texas. I can't believe it.
Oh yeah.
It's from your father's family or?
Nope, my mother's side.
Oh, I see. So my second question is from a mother's point of view. Now I'm a mother for three beautiful children, and they like acting and they want to be actors and actresses, and they are also interested in directing. You started acting when you are very young. Do you think it's a good experience for kids to be in that world that early? I ask this question because some kids they become stars at a very young age, then they end up having some psychological problems later on.
Well, they have, there's big problems of abuse that can happen to kids. We know in Hollywood, there's a predatory system. Some kids have been, molested or psychologically abused. Um, I think that, I was very lucky, fortunate. I didn't become like a star. I was just, in my dad's movies. It's very
Mhm.
different when you're on a protected set, with your parents protecting you, then it's a safe environment. If you're just, out there making movies like Corey Feldman and Corey Haim, some of these bigger stars without your parents, and, then you can end up with all kinds of bad influences. So I would say it's all about, keeping a relationship with your kids, being there for them. If they're going to be acting as kids in movies, I think the parent, at least one parent, should always be around and with them to be a guardian and to make sure that they're not being influenced or hurt. And other than that, it's a great experience. Just it's fun. People are very starstruck in the wrong way. Acting is just acting. It's a wonderful ability. Some people have practiced at it and are more gifted, but ultimately we don't have to treat it in such a way as though they're gods. If you're going out there and you're a young kid and you want to perform, right? You can perform in a theater, in a little school's theater show. You can perform in a whatever, like in front of your parents. There's many ways for kids to perform and express themselves, and it's just one form of expression. So I don't think there's anything wrong with it. I also just don't think it should be glorified so much as we do in our society. I think it's a misunderstanding. Just this desire for people to be creative. We all have that instinct, and some people are, just better at their things. They work harder at it. It's still, if they're going to be famous when they're young, it doesn't mean that they're famous when they're older, right? There's many cases. Macaulay Culkin is very famous when he was a kid. He doesn't act in movies anymore. So, it's life. You got to be where you are in your life. If the journey takes you through acting in movies when you're young, and then you stop acting or you do other things, that's beautiful. There's no set road, right? You have to follow your passion and your destiny.
Yes, but still human beings are human beings. Stardom is such a strange experience, when you get all the attentions and admiration from other people. Even I'm not an actress, as a young writer, I had my accomplishment when I was like 14. I started to become a national syndicated columnist. I got, hundreds of letters every day. So that has an impact on me, Later, I always feel I'm not good enough. I should be better than what I'm right now. So this type of stardom, I think especially in Hollywood, you can live in a very glamorous life. And how does that affect people psychologically? And is there a way to reach a certain inner peace without these type of distraction?
Oh, of course. I mean, that's a poison. What you're saying is exactly, it's poison. You see, people are poisoned by their own ego and their own vanity, because it's not to say that it's not your fault that, when you have attention, you can believe it, right? And you'd be like, wow, I'm really gifted. And then you create your own inner narrative of having to achieve that. What lengths will you go to? And then you get depressed when you don't achieve the same results, right? So you may have success one year and the next year you may not, and you start to get depressed. So many people in Hollywood are addicted to all kinds of, drugs or alcohol, because it's like poison. And so you have to get out of the ego. And how do you do that? Well, as you know, there's many spiritual paths in life to take. From me, my perspective is I can only offer, I never felt like I was a success in Hollywood, but I felt that I grew up with a wealthy family and a background that could be toxic, right? That could be spoiled. And
Yes.
So I was very lucky to experience, to travel the world, to see the contrast of lives, to see what poverty really looks like, and to then, have more of a spiritual orientation, to realize that all is passing. What is here today, just because you have wealth today doesn't mean it's going to be here tomorrow. And there's no better message. Nothing is better than the pandemic this year to remind people everything you thought was safe and secure, whether it was your job, your business, your wealth, your health, all these things can be gone like that.
Yes. It's interesting when you talk about you come from a wealthy family, so it makes me more interested because, when I first moved to the United States, I find that so many Chinese people want to become doctors and engineers. And in my world, when I was in China, everybody was creative, was a poet or writer or journalist or film people. So I was raised in a very intellectual background. So when I came here, everybody wanted to change. So I realized it's like to become really creative in film or in writing, you have to have a lot of social resources and connections. Is that true?
Connections, of course, but it doesn't mean that, where do the connections come from? It can be, most people, I think, in the film business made the connections through like going to college or becoming an intern and then working their way up and knowing, becoming friends with the right people, being at the right place at the right time, the actor that's, got the right agent or got the right manager. I mean, a lot of these things are just connections, but it doesn't mean that because you come from a family, that's the only way to break in. You don't know where the connection is going to come from. It could come from a party. It could come from an event, it could come from a friend of a friend. So you don't know. I mean, of course, life is connection, right? We are human, right? We're all based in connection. Do we like somebody? Do we connect with them? Do we want to be friends with them? Do we want to share time with them? But I think the problem is that many people are driven by the wrong things when it comes to connection, right? That's exactly the point of the Harvey Weinstein story. You know, people like Harvey, you know, had so much power that people were, you know, money and influence, that people were scared to challenge him, to say no, to, you know, they want to be his friend, even if no one likes him, but he's got power and influence, so they want to be his friend. It's like, this is the problem with our world, is that we focus on the wrong things. The connection should be based in the human. Do you like this person or not? Not, well, will this person help me? And in Los Angeles, there's way too much of that psychology of, what can you do for me? Can you help me? Can you get me a job? Can you further my career? And if you're only focused on that, you lose your humanity, I think.
Can you give me a picture, paint me a picture of Hollywood as an insider?
I don't consider myself a Hollywood insider. You know, my perspective of Hollywood actually is about the work. Because, you know, growing up, I was on film sets, you know, so I actually saw what Hollywood to me was about. It's about the people that are working, you know, 10, 12 hours a day. That are not, that you never heard of. You know, it's the person, you know, it's the people that are doing the, what do you call it? They're doing the technical side, the electrical side, the, you know, the grips, the sound designers, the, you know, the costume designers, everyone that's behind the scenes, that's, you know, hundreds, if not thousands of people going to work on a movie. That was what I saw. You know, I saw Hollywood as, you know, fantasy. When people think of Hollywood as like red carpets and parties, it's like, that's just the ego. That's massaging the ego. But the work is what interested me, as far as like the amount of people and commitment involved, everyone involved in making a movie, and their energy and their you know, how do you say, their sweat and their love, you know, for their work. That's what always impressed me. Even for the actors, you know, most actors are not really, you know, they have their own mind, but most actors are more interested in playing somebody else. You know, they're more interested in getting into the skin and playing with emotions and, you know, working. So the parties, I don't know. I never was that interested by the parties, I guess.
Yeah, because you graduated from Princeton University. You are different. You are educated, and you also have strong beliefs in yourself. So can you talk about your life in Princeton and how that has affected your life?
Princeton was a challenge because I found it lonely in many ways. You know, I've always, I guess, getting to Princeton was interesting because I felt very driven by intellectual pursuits. I was very much a reader, and I love to read. I love to study. History was my major at Princeton, but
what type of history?
Once I was there, I studied a lot of different cultures, different eras, but my focus for my thesis work was in American history, and I wrote a book called The New World Order. And this is my book. Actually, this is based on my thesis work at Princeton.
I see.
Yeah. But yeah, no, I mean, I found Princeton very isolating, not isolating, but just sort of, I felt lonely there because I felt, you know, I was more outside of the box in terms of my thinking, and I was questioning. I was opposed to the Iraq War when I was there, and it was not necessarily, you know, it was kind of mixed. I think probably most people were apolitical, or they didn't express it, but I was more vocal in my opposition to the war. And I just felt that there was not much diversity. You know, there was a little bit of Asian culture, not much Black, even less Latino. And I kind of thrived on, you know, because of as I said, I traveled as a kid, and I got, you know, to experience different cultures, and I was more interested by different cultures. I wasn't so interested by like the typical sort of, you know, white background, good education, overachievers that were the majority of the population when I was there. So I was mostly hanging out with the kids from different backgrounds, different cultures. I missed that, you know, that diversity. I missed that when I was at Princeton.
I see. Princeton sounds very traditional. I'm surprised. So different from my college experience at Berkeley. The culture was so diverse over there, and so
Berkeley is it's known as a liberal campus. They're probably the most, they were at least in the old days, liberal in the good sense. Now liberal is, you know, I don't know if I'm necessarily so much with that ideology, but historically Berkeley was, you know, a hub for the anti-activism from the days of Vietnam, right?
Yes, yes. Talking about that, we have to mention about your father's movies. There's several movies about the Vietnam War. I'm surprised that he is considered controversial in the US. How come?
Well, because he made a movie called JFK,
Yes,
and
yes, I know that.
that put him already. Yeah, that made him a conspiracy theorist. For the media, they said he was a conspiracy theorist, and then after that, he got even more controversial in the 2000s because he started interviewing people like Fidel Castro and Hugo Chavez and even Putin most recently.
Uh-huh.
And because he did those interviews and documentaries, he made documentaries just interviewing, not like going into like the full history of these people, but just his conversations with them. That made him very controversial for the media.
Wow. So when I was in college, I studied journalism. There was this very famous Italian female journalist who interviewed some dictators. Everybody was admiring her for her courage to talk to these people.
Well, Annie, why is it that when Trump made the sort of, inroads with Kim Jong-un in North Korea, why is that such a bad thing? The liberals are screaming that this is a bad thing.
Mm-hmm.
I thought that was a good thing that, they had conversations and he went to talk to him.
Yes.
I thought that was amazing. And why did the liberals? It's terrible. Don't you think that's strange?
Father is very famous in Asia, and I don't know if it has anything to do with his sensibility. I told you when I watched the cinematography of his movie Alexander the Great, I felt like it could have been the Chinese movie. It's so majestic and grand. It's so familiar, So what do you think of his work?
Well, sure. I mean, of course, I grew up watching it and admiring it. And I shot the behind the scenes for Alexander. I did the documentaries about the making of the film.
Mm-hmm.
I was on the film. I was on the set, with him throughout the shoot. And I did a documentary called Fight Against Time, which is sort of an hour and a half, like a feature-length documentary about his vision and how a director works, his process, his relationship, why he cared about Alexander's story. So I thought that was a very beautiful documentary. People can watch it on YouTube, actually.
Yes. Okay. I'll check it out. So your father is a Buddhist and you are a Muslim, but your family background is Judeo-Christianity. So this, I find it so fascinating.
I never consider myself anything. I think in the interviews, I always said I consider myself more a Jewish, Christian, Muslim than anything, because if you understand, they're called people of the book for a reason. The Mohammedan tradition is actually the prophecy and the lineage of Jewish prophets. So it's really just one. There's called one God of the Bible. The Old Testament, New Testament is the same God of the Quran. So I've always said that I consider myself someone of faith when it comes to one Creator.
So your father is a Buddhist. I'm a Buddhist too. So does he really practice Buddhism, or it's more like a meditation?
I would say, he meditates. He meditates daily. And I mean, I would say that our spirituality, he has a spiritual practice and I have mine. And, our spirituality may differ in that I think I'm more a believer in a creator, in a God, a creator. And other than that, we both have our different ways, our spiritual practices.
So do you have interfaith dialogues with your father?
No, I mean, there's no reason to, he's not someone that I feel like I need to have an interfaith dialogue with because, he has his opinion. He's more I think he's more materialist. I would say he doesn't believe in, he may believe in reincarnation, but I don't think he necessarily believes in God. As, God of the Bible, let's say, a creator God. But his wife is a Christian, so they can have their own interfaith dialogue as far as I'm concerned. Yes, she's a Korean Christian, actually.
Okay. In China, many second generation film actors and directors get into the same field. I think it's the same in the US. So please tell me the pros and cons of being Oliver Stone's son.
Well, I don't necessarily feel like I'm in the same business. First of all, the business has changed so much.
Yes.
That it's not the same Hollywood that, my father thrived in the 80s and 90s in a Hollywood was much more story driven. That was, that had much more independence of, let's say, filmmaking.
Mm-hmm.
Now I think you get a little bit more the streaming culture, television culture, right?
Mm-hmm.
Hollywood is more television than
Mm-hmm.
big films. So it's a different Hollywood. And also, I followed my path, which is just, it's unique to me. So at one level, I think, having my father as a mentor for me as a writer and a storyteller was wonderful. But it's very difficult to compare because, I'm doing work hosting shows like Buzzsaw on YouTube and Gaia, watching the Hawks on RT. I've done, my books with, including New World Order. I've written, I think, 3 books.
Mm-hmm.
So, I do different work. I think, I'm more interested in being across different platforms,
Yes.
because that's the nature of where we are.
Yes,
We're in a virtual culture, right? Digital culture.
Yes.
So my influence and my path will take me where it needs to be, and it will never be the same as my father. It's a different, it's not like following in his footsteps. He has his story and I have mine.
Yes. So you are pursuing a more intellectual path. It's just now Hollywood is considered more entertainment, but you are doing something else like writing books, writing poetry, and also, interviewing people, having dialogues on different subjects.
I love being able to make movies when the opportunity comes.
Yes.
It's difficult to get a movie made, right? It's
Yes.
a big job, a lot of energy, a lot of work, a lot of money. So, and when I'm not actually making a movie, I really just like to pursue my other interests, and that does include everything you mentioned. Yeah, why not? Life is too rich to just only focus on getting a movie made.
But what about being an actor? Your father is very proud of your looks.
Well, acting is more than just looks. It's it's its own industry, it's its own business, and again, I have not had the success as an actor that makes it easy to get cast. So I think my interest is really more behind the scenes storytelling, writing, working on the next project.
So do you want to be an actor?
I enjoy acting,
Mm-hmm.
but I don't feel like that's necessarily like my only calling. Actors, again, as a class, as a professional class, that's their commitment, that's their life work.
Mm-hmm.
And most actors are the ones you've never heard of. Most actors are the names that you don't know. Most actors are the ones that are working their butts off, and they're just happy to get somewhere on screen. And most of the time they're just auditioning and rehearsing, and there's millions of them. It's a very difficult job to become known as an actor. It's like one in a million, right? So I think, for me, it's like, I enjoy it. If the opportunity comes, if it's the right role, I love to act.
Yeah.
I'm in a film called Night Walk that comes out next year from Lionsgate. And I guess it's on Amazon next year. I'm happy to just have had the opportunity to work, and I got to work with Mickey Rourke on that project, and Eric Roberts.
Mm-hmm.
But again, it's not like that's my life's passion. My life's passion is being me, exploring
Mm-hmm.
my passions, my interests, my many things that I am and that I pursue in my life. How do you say? I like the diversity of my life.
Yes.
The fact that I can write poetry and that I can talk to people about any subject and have a conversation and host things, or work on a script, write a script, develop a TV series. I mean, I've done many things over these years, and my life has only begun as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, you have a very curious mind.
Yeah.
Maybe being an occasional actor is the best choice, and then it can bring some interesting aspect to your life. And
Well, let me know if you've got a good script and you want me to act in it. I'm open. I'm a free being. I love the freedom of just trying different things. Like I said, I love it. We shouldn't be one thing in life. We should be many things, right?
My next question, actually, we touched it a little bit earlier. You lived in both New York City and LA before, right?
Yes.
Which city do you like better?
Right now, none of them. Right now, I don't like any of them because I think their governors are nuts and their mayors are crazy and they're trying to impose way too much with lockdowns and forcing people's businesses to close. I think they're both extremist dictators. But in general, LA is home, but I love California as a state more. Just because of California is so beautiful. You have mountains, you have desert, you have oceans, you have forests. We have a beautiful, beautiful state. But New York City is the heartbeat of the world in a way. I mean, it's no city in the world like New York. And I love Paris, I love London, I love Shanghai, I love Hong Kong. I love many cities. I've been many cities and I love them all. But New York has an energy that's so unique. I just hope that it doesn't. Again. We've seen, again, talk about Chinese money. A lot of Chinese money has come in, building new buildings, but New York hasn't cleaned up in a way. Like, I think it's falling apart in many ways. Everything from the garbage in the streets, the smells, the subways. It's just, for a 21st century city, it needs to clean up. And I don't think that it's doing that. So I don't think it's going to last if it doesn't really clean up its actual, the infrastructure of the city, the actual, the lifestyle, the standard of living for most people. They're living in, in little closets, paying $2,000 a month. It's crazy.
Yes. Prior to my life in Houston, I didn't know the contrast between the coast cities and inland are so huge in America. What do you think of the fact that there are almost the two Americas nowadays?
They've always been two Americas. Ever since, you could say, the beginning, because there was a North and a South in the beginning, and there was the part of America. So what's interesting to me is that there was initially a North and a South divide, and that's became, in a sense, a bit, the basis. Even before the North and the South, by the way, there was the divide in the political parties between, you could say, between Jefferson and Hamilton, or Jefferson and Adams, right? There's always been a divide, and that's, in a sense. Both sides have good arguments, by the way. I'm not pro North or pro South, actually. Right now, like I said, I'm very pro South right now because they're, I think, doing what's right. The southern states are challenging the states that seem to have some electoral support. So I say, the South also has great things. We have this image because of the divide in terms of two different ways of being, that we think one is bad and the other one is good. And it comes out in media. Media talks about Trump supporters like they're dummies. It goes back to the days of, of Bush and stuff. Anyone who voted for Bush was an idiot. The liberal mentality became very illiberal. To me, liberalism is about openness. It's about hearing the other person's perspective. It's about having a debate. It's about saying, maybe, there's points you're making that I agree with. I think we've become very illiberal. I think the liberals have become the most illiberal in a way because they don't even want to hear the other side. They don't want to have freedom of speech. They don't want to allow that people can be different and have different traditions and cultures and values. And to me, it's very important that we have this contrast. So to me, there's many Americas. Every country, every state is like its own country. You travel across America and you're like, man, what a beautiful country. We got Hawaii, which is tropical and Asiatic. And then you've got Alaska, which is, again, a whole, tradition and culture. And then, you go to like Kentucky, and then you're in Colorado, and these are different states. These are different worlds, different people. And even within those states, there's contrast. So I think there's many more Americas, but the media wants to portray it like there's the educated and the uneducated. If you're educated, you believe certain things. If you're uneducated, you believe, other things. It's like, that's such nonsense. I don't like it. I don't like this idea of two Americas. I think there's many Americas, and that's the beauty of America to me, is the contrast. Oh, you don't know both sides. There are many more sides, but yes, two of the sides. When it comes to the Republicans and Democrats, you get a little bit of a glimpse.
The red and blue. So you were born in 1984. So kids in China who were born around that time are called the little emperors and little empresses, because at that time there was this one child policy. So they're the only kid in their family. Unfortunately, some of them considered very materialistic and selfish when they grow up, because they were treated as the center of the universe. So I'm very interested in the generational differences in America. I'd like to know if there's generation reference to the people your age in America.
Oh yeah. It's actually very interesting you mentioned that. I actually was, I was an only child till I was 7. Then my brother was born. So I was the little emperor. And this is why, my father was very wise to make me travel and to show me the things out, away from America, to show me the contrasts, because otherwise I could have been very spoiled and materialistic. Materialism is the big problem. So, we do have, in a similar sense, the 80s kids who came up at a time when the focus in America was all about the baby. The baby has to be safe, right? Before that, in the old times, they said, like, the kids would go out riding bicycles, they came home before sunset. The parents, were just only worried if the kid wasn't home before sunset. By the 80s, it was the craze around safety, protect the kid, seat belt, buckle up, helmet. If you scrape your knee, oh, baby, are you okay? We have to protect you. It was very, it was in a sense too safe. Like, they created a culture that was about they could say, not fondling, what do you say? Protecting. It was like overprotection. It was over pacifying, the child. And so there was a cultural similarity between the two countries in that way. But to me, the big difference is that when I go to China, my only issue is that there's a materialism that has grown up there, because perhaps the people, the peasants and others that were lived in such poverty, started to see the comforts and the success of wealth and the advent of better standards of living, and they became too materialistic. I think spirituality is the way to combat that. The way to combat the little emperor, is to be more spiritual, to become, in the Chinese tradition, become more Taoist, right, or Buddhist, or to remember what is that thousands of years of Confucian culture, having to break from the communist ideology, which to me is too dogmatic, right, when it comes to the idea that there's no God. Come on, this is like, how are we here? We're here by spirit. We're here by the grace of the chi, right? We have to be in touch. Spirituality is the only way to combat this psychology of I am the emperor, it's all about, my material success and well-being. It's like, we all want to have material well-being, but life does not begin when we're born. It doesn't end when we die.
Yes, when you grew up, tell me your father's role in your upbringing.
Well, his role, he was very busy. He did 10 films in 10 years, in the time that I was born, 84 until 95. He made everything from Salvador to Nixon. So, imagine, he was really, really busy. And I got into it a little bit in my documentary I mentioned earlier, Fight Against Time. I think you'd appreciate it, because it gets into some of the relationship that he and I had and that we didn't have when I was a kid. It was very polarizing, you could say. I was hot, cold, he was either present or he was distant. And most of the time he was distant. So after I was 10, he became a little bit more involved when he wasn't working as much. After that, he slowed down a little bit. So we had more time to get to be together, to travel together. As I mentioned, traveling, we went to places like India and Tibet and Nepal and Vietnam and Cambodia and China, all these cultures, different, East African cultures we had to experience. So that was a very powerful for me to see, to open my eyes and see the world. As I said, see the contrast. So I would say, it was a tough, it was tough having a father that was so driven, by success. Many people have that. Their father or their mother can be very busy with their career and absent from them, emotionally absent and physically absent from them. So I would say that was, for me, an aspect of our relationship.
From picture of his looks, he seems to be a very serious person.
Yes, I would say serious is a good word for him. Very serious. Sometimes too much so. His sense of humor is like Natural Born Killers. Remember the movie?
Yes.
No, he's funny. He's a very funny person, but serious, intense. Yes. I think for him, it may be aspects of his cultural upbringing. His father was very tough, cynical guy, Jewish ancestry, but New Yorker, stockbroker type, very focused on material things, money and making a living, and he did well for himself. And his mother was more of a French bon vivant, but she was also a sort of a Marie Antoinette type of character, his mother. She always had a court around her. And so, I think for him, it was, he had parents. Everyone is a product of their environment, right, in their childhood, and then how much work they do on themselves to hopefully improve themselves beyond what they're given.
Would you say you are very close to him?
Yeah, I would say we're still close.
So how often do you see each other?
I'm lucky that I live in California, so I don't live far from my parents. Some people don't see their parents except once a year, right, for holidays, which is, some people don't see their parents for years because they're in different states and they don't travel. Yes. In my case, I live close enough that we can visit every few weeks or so. But yeah, when I was living in LA, we would see each other all the time.
Yeah, that's wonderful. I'm glad to hear that. I thought sometimes when the father has a very big ego and is very serious and dominate, and the kids can feel alienation.
Yes, they can. In fact, I've seen it many times. Many kids who are products of that end up with all kinds of insecurity issues, speech impediments, you name it. But it's a journey. It's a process. We have to overcome our upbringing, right? We have to work on finding our own confidence, our own sense of self. And, it's a journey because when you're young, you don't have confidence. I mean, when you're young, when you're really a baby, you have confidence because no one has told you no. But as people tell you no, you get rejected, you get pushed around, bullied, right? You lose it. You start to feel like, well, I'm not worth anything. Who am I? What am I worth? So it's everyone's fight, ultimately. I don't think it's a bad thing to have, a parent who can be a challenge for you, dictatorial or whatnot, tyrannical, you could say, or overbearing. It's actually a great opportunity for you to find your strength. And he's got a new book that people should read if they're interested about him called Chasing the Light. Chasing the Light is his autobiography. And it gives great insight into who he is.
So what are the projects that you have been working on now, and what are the things you like to accomplish in the future? Maybe you can tell me more.
Well, I don't like to share too much about projects that are in the works and I'm still putting together. I can simply say, as you mentioned, that I have a new poetry book called The Ephemeral Shades of Time that just published. Is very beautiful poetry. And there's an accompanying album, spoken word album with music called Alien Spirit. That's going to be coming out very soon on iTunes and Spotify and all that. Mm-hmm. And Alien Spirit is with Michel Huigen, a beautiful musician, and he composed it. So I think if people are interested in the poetry or in the album, they'll appreciate the music in Alien Spirit, it's called.
Have you done any promotion on these things?
No, I mean, I do interviews. I do little interviews here and there. I get myself out there. But major press releases, no, I haven't. I honestly just trust that, everything has its market and its time. The book I mentioned, New World Order, this book that I wrote 4 years ago.
Yes.
Now people are interested in it because everyone's talking about the New World Order. They're talking about the New World Order, the Great Reset. So all of a sudden after, 4 years, it's selling more than it ever sold. You got to trust everything has its time and its place. So as I said, I create really just from the passion of creation and trusting that there's going to be a time and a place for it.
Do you have any things to say to people who want to get into Hollywood or want to do something creative, but they are still a starved artist?
I say, don't worry about Hollywood. Just focus on doing your art. Let it find you. Let your audience find you. Let your journey, your destiny find you. And Hollywood is an illusion. It's a spell that people have been living with, this idea of what Hollywood looks like and should be. And it's irrelevant. I don't think it's the future. I don't think Hollywood is the future. I think the future is going to be creators, like you said, everyone having their own channel, everyone their own platform, finding their own community, finding their own fans. And you can be creating movies and TV shows in Detroit or in Austin or in Alaska. It doesn't matter where you are. Just, find your group, find your people, right? Create together. Tell stories, paint, find whatever it is that you love to do to express yourself. And, don't focus so much on the fame and all that stuff, I mean, that comes and goes. It can be, as you said, when you're 14 and you become successful, it can be very demoralizing if you feel like you're not as famous. But that's the problem. It's not about the fame. It's just, are you doing what you feel like you love to do? And if you're doing what you love to do, you're blessed.
How can you be so cool? I mean, you are in Santa Barbara. You should be surrounded by parties. What's his name? Leonardo DiCaprio and what's the name? Arnold Schwarzenegger just crashed into his party. He told me like millions of times. He can't just forget about it. It's such a big deal to his life. A very successful economist.
And my question is, what have they ever done for him? What has it done for him? Wow. Who is he? So the funny thing is, someone like that, right? Oh, I saw so-and-so, I saw Leo, I saw Arnold. And it's like, and does anyone know who you are or care who you are? If you die tomorrow, will anyone care? Or is it just going to be like, no, they only care about Leo and Arnold? The point is, who are you? That's what matters in this world. Am I the star of my movie? I'm the star of my movie. You're the star of your movie. If we can honor our own star and really say, what matters is what I do when I'm here and what I have to bring to other people. Can I help other people? Can I help inform them, enlighten them, inspire them, bring them something in their life? Then you're a star. Be the star of your movie. Be there to support and help and bring more to this planet and give to this planet. Otherwise, what's the point? Oh yeah, Leo crashed into my car. And who are you? Do you have anything to say? If you die tomorrow, does anyone care? So what do you care? You can go around telling people the rest of your life how you met Leo. So what? So what has Leo done for you? Is Leo paying your bills? Is Leo paying your bills? Why do you care so much? What do you care so much about them? They're beautiful. I mean, he's a great actor. If he's in a movie, I'll probably see it. I'll enjoy it. But am I going to sit there and go, wow, Leo DiCaprio? It's like, is he paying my bills? Does he know who I am? Does he care if I died? So what am I going to worship him for?
So you never had that feeling, like never had that similar experience in your life, or you outgrow that?
I never had the starstruck thing because I grew up around celebrity. I knew Tom Cruise when I was 4 years old. I was, played with Michael Douglas, as his son in a movie, and Kevin Costner and Jim and Val Kilmer. And I mean, they're just people, so I'm not like starstruck, Some of them were really nice. I really liked them as people. They were nice to me. But I don't know them. I can't say like, oh, it's my friend. So what do I care? But as far as parties, yeah, I mean, I was a party animal in my 20s. I probably went to clubs almost every night when I was in New York City, in my 20s. But for a couple of years, not all my 20s, but like probably 2-3 years, I was in clubs like almost every night. But it wasn't. It's like, so then what? You're just empty. If you live your whole life in the dark, you're a vampire. You don't have anything going on in your reality beyond getting drunk and seeking out sex or some kind of attention. I mean, it's like, what does that fill you with? It doesn't leave you with anything. It just leaves you wanting more.
Oh, you don't sound like 35. You sound like 65. You are so mature. It's like, I've been there, I've done that. You have this inner peace. In China, we say no desire. You don't have desire, nobody can beat you.
That's the ancient wisdom.
Yeah.
That's the ancient wisdom.
Yeah.
That's why I wrote a book called Desiderata, the things wanted or desired, right? It's a poetry, it's a fairy tale though. It's a poetic fairy tale. And exactly, it's about all the different shades of desire that we as humans experience. And how do you overcome it? Well, desire is a part of life. I don't think you can ever fully conquer it unless you're like a Buddha, but you can at least work with it. You can work with your desires so that you're not driven by them. You're not a slave to them. If you're a slave to your desire, then you're a slave. It doesn't matter if you're, you think you're a human, but if you're a slave to your desire, you're a slave. So you have to become the master of your desire in the sense of, okay, I have desires, I have wants, but does it rule me or do I choose?
But I also think maybe there's a cultural difference. Because in China, if you are second generation, if you are so-and-so's son, you know, everywhere you go, it's green light. And some people approach you or want to get to know you and will invite you to different films. It's like, it's so easy to become successful because people care so much about your background. Would you say it's less important in this culture?
Yeah, I remember Chinese culture, there's a bit more of a sense of honor and there's a respect for family and tradition, which I think is very powerful, you know, to give honor to, you know, to like, you know, if a man, if you like a man, if a man is considered honorable or noble, right? It's like you give respect to the son or to the daughter, right? Until they prove otherwise. If the son is a jerk, then, you know, of course you don't treat him well. But in America, it's about capitalism, don't forget. It's about money. So it doesn't really matter who your father is. If you're not making money, they don't care. You know, they just want to see if you're making, they just want to know if you're making money for them. That's what it's about in America.
I see. But do they think like, you know, the Chinese, if your father is Oliver Stone, maybe you can bring us more resources and we can make use of you?
No, because the film industry doesn't care. You know, when you sell a movie, they're not selling your father's name. The film business is all about, at this point, it's about making money. So if you know don't have a record of making money, if you don't have a name that people recognize for you know, let's say selling to the world, you know, if I sell it to Romania and Eastern Europe and France and Turkey and all these places, and they don't know your name, they don't care. They're not going to pay money for, you know, for it unless it's a good film. How do you get money to make the movie? It's a process, right? How do you get the money to make the movie? Well, you write a good script and you go from there. Doesn't mean it's going to be easy, even with a good script. Most people don't read scripts. Anyway, it's a whole deal. I don't want to get into the whole politics of movie making, but there's a lot of politics.
So Oliver Stone doesn't bring anything to Sean Stone.
Because it's not Oliver Stone's name on the movie, it's Sean Stone's name. And Sean Stone doesn't have the name that Oliver Stone has because we are different people. It's just a different culture.
It's
a very different culture.
I see.
I promise you, it's a very different culture. It's just, again, it's all about the Chinese perspective on how you know, notoriety and fame works. Listen, Kim Kardashian wasn't famous because her father was a great lawyer. Kim Kardashian was, you know, yes, she came from a good background as far as, you know, wealth goes, but Kim Kardashian was famous because she was a hot girl that did a sex tape, you know. Paris Hilton, you know, again, like the people like the novelty of a Hilton family or a Kardashian family, but you know, that wasn't what made them famous. What made them famous was doing things that were exploitative. And then people started talking about them. The media in America is very, very, very exploitative. Don't forget. I mean, look, you got shows in the 90s like her, you know, Jerry Springer, right? Was a huge show in America. Americans love sensation. They love, you know, things that are sort of. Anyway, the media I think is very manipulative, and
people
so it's a long conversation.
I mean, they really fight.
Oh yeah, I remember that. Yeah, I mean, Jerry Springer was, again, it's an aspect of America that I don't think is very healthy. And the media plays on very basic instincts: sex, violence, sensation, exploitation. Very, you know, very primal, base things. They don't talk about things like honor, and they don't really they don't tell the truth most of the time, to be honest with you.
So you got into Princeton. It has nothing to do with your father. You got into Princeton on your own. Would you say so?
I mean, I'm sure. Look, with all universities of a higher brand like that, right, which is limited. You know, you only have a 1,000 or so kids admitted every year. It always helps to have you know, a certain name or a certain you know, people writing you recommendations. But yes, I mean, did I have good grades? You're asking? Yeah, sure, I had good grades. If I was, you know, from another background and didn't have anyone writing recommendations, would I have gotten in? Probably not. It's the prejudice of that system. So, you know, I can't speak to you know, that process, but yeah, I mean, I think that overall the education system in America needs to be expanded away from this privileged idea of Ivy League, that, you know, you have to go to an Ivy League school to have a good education or whatnot.
Did you go to private high school?
I did.
You got some very good letters recommendation from your school or from anybody that
I got letters. I got letters from few people. I mean, it was I was a good student, but why?
No,
Why do you ask?
because I'm asking this question is because people are very caught up with the whole Ivy League thing, how to get into
Yeah,
school. If, people pay attention to your family, Oliver Stone's son is a factor for you to get into school. So people want to know that. You see, like Clinton's daughter, Obama's daughter, everybody gets into the best university in the world because the background.
sure, absolutely. I mean, again, our background absolutely plays into getting into the so-called best universities. I think it's ironic that the best universities were all built at least 200 years ago. It's sad. Why are we not building more universities? Why are we not building new systems of education? Why are we putting kids in these state colleges, state universities that have up to 100,000 students? I mean, it's outrageous. We should be building new Ivy League schools, not focusing on the old ones.
So what was like attending private school?
I mean, private school where I was, it was not a boarding school. It was just, for me, it was being close to home and having time to do my sports. I played football, ran track. I was a kid. I I studied. I worked hard. I guess to me it was normal education system, but I didn't go to a public school, so I can't speak to what that experience is like. And I didn't grow up in a poor community, so I can't speak to that experience.
So you didn't go to public school at all from elementary school on?
I mean, if you come from a so-called, from a relatively, any kind of wealth, it's rare to go to public school, especially in Los Angeles. I mean, some states have better public schools, but for Los Angeles and cities like that, it's not necessarily the public schools are not as quality, I would say.
Did your family have nannies and driver?
Yeah, I mean, not driver, no, but I mean, I had a housekeeper, sure.
So you just remind me of that TV show that Nicole Kidman did called The Big Little Lies.
Yeah, different. I mean, I like that show. It was interesting. That's much more. That's much more Newport Beach, sort of. I don't know, like it was set in
Monterey.
Carmel or something, right? It was a little bit smaller town.
Uh-huh.
I was in a big, growing up in a big city. You're not as it was not as gossipy in a way, a big city like LA. I know stories. I mean, I know kids that did go to parties since they were, 16 and hanging out at celebrities' houses and going to school with the celebrity kids that were, a little bit more ostentatious and a little bit more indulgent. My high school experience was not that, but it wasn't Big Little Lies either. No, that was a very, when you're in Los Angeles, it's a big city. It's a lot of people. It's not so insulated like that town was. My high school experience really was more, as I said, it was about football practice after school and doing homework till 10 o'clock at night and getting sleep and waking up at 6 and doing it over again. It was not that kind of lifestyle of hanging out and parties and all that. No, I mean, my school is actually mostly Jewish, so beyond the bar mitzvahs there was not that kind of pretension. It was actually again, kids that were smart, that were had to work hard to get into the private school. It wasn't just like anyone got in. You had to study and compete at that level of, not like compete in terms of insane levels, but just like you had to be aware that you have a lot of smart kids around you, and everyone there ends up going to a good school. Everyone there it's a prep school, so everyone there goes to a Berkeley or a Stanford or a Columbia or a Dartmouth or a Princeton. I mean, that was out of 100 kids, I would say probably like 70 or 80 went to like really top schools.
But your teachers really care about you Would you say so?
Our teachers, all through my life, I would say I had good teachers. I really can't say that I had a bad one that I couldn't stand. Yeah, no, I really respected.
Many Chinese kids that are sent to study in private schools or boarding schools from like very early age. Thank you so much for talking with me, and it has been a great pleasure.
Absolutely. No, I'm glad to, give some insights, and hopefully you got what you needed.
Yes, and I'm looking forward to reading your poetry collection.
Yeah, I'd love that. Thanks, Annie.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.